4A of the Constitution. And then finally, absence of any amendment will signify agreement with the president, which is essentially a total rejection of the bill. You do remember the withdrawal of the bill late last month, where the president met with a host of members of parliament at State House, Nairobi. I'll be keeping an eye on that. As I told you, any moment from now, we do anticipate a briefing from the National Police Service led by its IG at Jogo House. Now, first of all, let's get into the conversation for this first hour alone. We'll be speaking to Mr. Jeremiah Karanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Certified Secretary. Mr. Karanja, thank you for joining us this morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me start on that, Mr. Karanja. You have been through town. How is town looking like right now?
The town is deserted. It's not like the city of Nairobi that we know. You can't believe it.
Yes, because the conversation has been the cost of the protest, its impact on businesses and potential investors who are watching the country now and they want to invest into the country. The president last month held it at 2.4 billion and recently, the government spokesperson, that is Isaac Mora, clearly stated that the country has lost 6 billion and still counting. So what impact will this have on the country's economy?
Thank you. Maybe even before we go to the impact, so that I just provide us context to this discussion, allow me to mention one or two things about the Institute, where I'm the Chief Executive Officer. The Institute of Certified Secretaries is a professional association. And our members are called either certified secretaries, and based on the organizations they serve, they could be referred as company secretaries, board secretaries. I know sometimes people, when they see a secretary, they think is the secretary at the reception, but certified secretaries are people, professionals trained on matters, governance, ethics, and integrity. And therefore, we are in the right discussion because this is actually what we are trained, this is what we are examined, this is what we are regulated for, matters governance. Coming back to your question, as I mentioned, I'm a CEO, and therefore, even before we go to the national economy, I can already feel it, that pinch, because when you are supposed to be undertaking a number of activities, right now most of my staff members are working from home. They can't access the office. There is a cost element there because whether these people are working or not, you have to pay them salaries. And unfortunately, the activities that you are supposed to undertake so that you are able to generate revenues to pay salaries, you are unable to undertake those activities. So there is a direct cost on virtually every institution. And of course, what will happen as time goes by, this will also be felt. I know right now when we hear those numbers to the economy, billions and all that, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to the individual. But in the next few months, each one of us will be feeling a personal pinch in our pocket. So that, yes, the cost is dire. Yes.
And of course, we were just reeling from the COVID-19, the pandemic itself. And early this year, we had witnessed a protest that was organized by the opposition, led by the Azimio principal, that is Raila Amolo Odinga. Now we're in another phase of protest. So will this stunt the country's growth?
This has, and when you look at it, because again, this has to be taken into a context. I see it as not only the COVID-19 and then the demonstrations came, then now we have these current ones. If you just step back a bit, you actually realize this country, for quite a number of years now, we have been in a permanent situation of either politics or demonstrations. You look right from the 2007. If you come forward, then we had at least 2013, the elections were fairly peaceful, not much. Then came the next. So we had the issues of calling IBC home and all that. When you look at the last more than 15 years or thereabout, we have been in this situation for quite some time. And actually, you can see our economy is very resilient because despite that, we are still able to move. Now, the fear is if what we are having currently continues, then this will have a greater impact. But to me, that is not actually the major issue.
Yes.
Because even if the protests were to stop now, unless we look at what are the root causes of these things that keep on taking us back there, we will have this protest stop even today, but in 1 year's time, again, we are back to it. So we need to look at history, look at what has been happening consistently, what are the issues that cause us as a nation to be in this situation, and therefore address those cause issues. Yeah.
Now, the issues that have been a bone of contention between the Gen Z's protesters against the government, it has been governance related. We have seen even the government instituting some of the changes with saying CS positions will no longer be there. We are removing offices of the First Lady and the Second Lady when it comes to finances. What are these other issues that the government needs to at least address so that it does not reach to that level where this is a recurring theme every year?
You know, this, where we are, we didn't just come all of a sudden. And the situation we are in is actually not even a creation of the current government. It's a situation we have developed over the years. When you talk about governance, we have had what I would call governance missteps over the years. And these have been growing gradually until where we are. So when you look right from independence and what we needed to have done then, which we didn't do, coming all through to where we are, you can analyze very key, very fundamental issues, governance issues. And now what we are seeing today, we are just harvesting the fruits of what we have just been planting. And therefore, it is important when matters governance, you look at the roots. What are the root causes? And I would say governance is the foundation of everything, is the root. What we are now experiencing are just the leaves and the fruits. So we need to go back to the foundation and ask ourselves, what are these issues? And that is part of what we'll be discussing in this session.
And of course, to you, what is standing out? Because we have seen a lot of demands from the Gen Zs to the governments. The government, yes, has addressed some of them, but to you, from a governance expert point of view, what are these other outstanding issues that have been a bone of contention that has been fueling this crisis?
There have been many discussions in various platforms on some of these issues. And of course, as you have correctly mentioned, the government, and I want to appreciate His Excellency the President, has taken steps to try and address some of these issues. Of course, one of the key items that I note, because we should not have gotten where we are, is one of the processes that is enshrined in our Constitution called public participation. We did, for instance, if you go back to the issue of just picking, and I think finance bill was just a trigger. And it was a trigger to what has been happening for quite some time now, whether it's in the county assemblies, whether it's in the national legislative arms and all that, where we have situation where we are saying we are engaging public, but it's just for the sake of it. Really what the public is saying is not being taken into consideration. Now, this, of course, was the trigger. But then it has also unearthed quite a number of things, because where we were as a nation, we were at a situation where our ethics, our morality, our governance was rotten. And I'm not only pointing at the government, even for us at individual level. Right from the families, even institutions. I'm a church person, and the church has also been pointed. And it's true, you look at some of the issues that we have had as a nation on the church institution, which is supposed to be the light and salt, or other religious groupings. So there are those fundamental issues on governance that we have tolerated as a nation for long. And I think the conversation now is people have gotten to a situation where they are tired of their old ways. They are not only tired of government, it's themselves, their own behaviors, which we have, and most of this, because I'm not a Gen Z, but I'm a few years older than them, so I can also classify myself in the same category. But just to mention that maybe myself and those older than us, there are these unethical behaviors which we have tolerated over a period of time, which have costed this nation dearly. And these young people are coming to a position and saying, we are tired. I listened, I attended one of the engagements on the X Spaces on Saturday, where they had invited EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and a gentleman called Derek was the one presenting on behalf of EACC, and he was taken to task and on what is the role of EACC and what EACC has done. But I appreciate one point that Derek of EACC mentioned. He said, as EACC, if you remember, in 2022, we flagged out hundreds of members of parliament, potential politicians, or politicians who wanted to be elected as members of parliament. And we say these are of questionable conduct. But you as citizens went ahead and elected them as MPs. And therefore, what we're asking as EACC, what should we have done? We have told you, these people have corruption cases, which either are ongoing, or that these people, you cannot trust them on matters ethics, but as citizen, you went to the polls and elected them. So it's a whole societal problem. And when you ask why would you go to vote for a person who you have been told by the commission responsible for corruption that this person will steal your money, and you go ahead and elect them? It boils down to one thing, that as a nation, we have been for long tolerating some of these unethical behaviors, even at our personal level, to the extent that even that person who is throwing a stone at those who are stealing today, they are only throwing a stone to them because themselves they have not gotten an opportunity to steal. Given an opportunity, they will also be stealing like them. And just to illustrate that, you've seen, as young people, we've been saying that maybe we are not well represented in government. Maybe if it was young people, they would have brought change. But some of the people actually we are complaining about, some of the leaders are actually very youthful leaders. So it's actually not a matter of age. It's a matter of a society. We need to rethink our ethical culture. We need to rethink our morality.
And should it not start then, if it is a societal problem, aside from the structure, which is the family, which is the lowest cadre, it should start from there. But in the education system itself, should it be inculcated there so that at a young age you know how to behave when it comes to ethical and integral matters?
Yes, I agree. It needs to be inculcated right there. But you know what? If we don't believe in it, even when we put it in the curriculum, it will just be theory. It will be theory because the teacher who is taking the student through that curriculum, and they themselves don't believe in these ethical and morality issues we are talking about. They will tell the students ABCD only for purposes of passing an exam. During our time, we went through a unit in high school that I think was called Social Education and Ethics. So how do you measure that it has had an impact in me if the teacher who is teaching that will go ahead and take a bribe? So I agree with you. It's a whole approach, system approach, which it needs concerted efforts. It's not only the role of the president. It needs, of course, right at the top leadership. That's where we need to do to patronize this change. But it's a whole societal effort that we need to say as a society, enough is enough. And we are tired with our old ways. We want to change as a nation. And this is the new route that we want to take. And that will resolve most of the issues that we are having as a society.
And given that you said earlier on, as an institute, you're looking at integrity as well as ethical matters. We do know what Chapter 6 of the Constitution clearly states. Corruption has been a bone of contention in this particular latest demands that have been made by the Gen Zs. What needs to be done so that at least the trust deficit between the people and the government at least can meet closer by?
Yeah. The Council of the Institute of Certified Secretaries yesterday issued a statement, and the title of the statement, we are calling it Governance for a Sustainable Kenya, Ethical Transformation and Moral Renewal for Regaining Public Trust. Yes. Because today what we are having is trust deficit, and we need to engage on matters governance and ethical transformation and moral renewal if you are to regain this trust. Among the many things that the council highlighted was appointment, recruitment of people in public offices. We must ensure that the people who occupy those offices are of highest ethical standing in the society. That includes and that's also, I want to point a figure on, even on myself and also on our profession and other professional associations. It includes that these people, if they are members of professional bodies, the professional bodies also need to hold them account. Because I listened to Eric of VACC yesterday, and actually that was one of the points that he was mentioning. In every, maybe if it's a corruption case, there must have been a professional involved. There was either a certified secretary, there was a lawyer, there was an accountant. What is the role of these professional associations? Yes, everybody needs to take up their role, whether it's the professional bodies, whether it's the government, whether it's the investigating agencies, our judiciary, our Office of Director Public Prosecution, yes. So that if I'm accused of corruption as a public officer, then the law should take its course, and we should not be having sacred cows. We should not be having anybody who is untouchable. So one of the areas that we need to deal with is the issue of appointments and recruitment. Ensure that it's only people, and even election, is only people of the highest ethical standards get to this position. But number two, we have a serious problem in our election process, in our political governance. And that's where almost all our problems start. Because the nature of our elections is such that if I went today and said I want to vie for the position of governor, the electorates will be looking at what I'm giving them, what handouts am I giving for them to elect me. And therefore, it only becomes like it's mandatory for you to get to those positions, elective positions, and which are the policy-making positions. Either you have to have had a very good background, or you have to steal so that you can please the electorates. And even after you're elected, and sometimes I sympathize with our members of parliament, because the demands and the expectations for them is so high. We need to do civic education so that the electorates understand what is the role of an MCA. The role of MCA is not to do roads or come and do ABCD. They are supposed to hold the governor and his executive accountable the same way to an MP. But then we have transformed these roles to be the roles of assisting the entire society. And therefore, if whatever salary I'm given, and I'm expected to go back to the constituency every weekend to do fundraising and to give donations, where do you think I'll get that money? That money, I'll get it from public entities. I have to steal. So we have to change the entire narrative on how we get our leaders. And that's why I'm grateful to what the president said about the public, the harabes and all that. Actually, it should be banned for such positions because if we don't address some of those issues, it is only people with resources, and sometimes most of these resources that you give that freely is not your hard-earned money. People are usually very they guard their hard-earned resources very jealously. They will not just distribute like that. But money which I have just stolen from somewhere, that one I can come and dish the way I want, because in the first place it was never mine. So we need to ensure that even the electorates, their expectations should also be managed. What do they expect from a member of parliament? That's why we go, by the way, to create all these funds, including CDF. Now we want to do some for the MCAs and all that. Because as a country, we have never appreciated what is the role of legislature. The main role of legislature is to hold the executive accountable and, of course, to pass laws. But we have gradually taken legislature's role to be almost equivalent to the executive. They are doing executive roles. And it's because that's what, as a society, we expect them. So we need to deal with our political governance and have it right.
And of course, talking about matters of ethics and integrity, back then we were talking about lifestyle audit. You need to explain to us how you acquired this wealth before even attaining this particular position. Should that be the case? Because main priorities or the main issues that this Gen Z's protesters have been raising is the opulence that some of the officials, government officials, have been showing. So should the conversation of lifestyle audit come back, and how should it look like this time around?
Actually, the Gen Zs have been doing the lifestyle audit for leaders online. So whether the other institutions that are supposed to do that have been doing, but actually they have been analyzing and saying this owns this and all that. But yes, I agree. That is an important point that we need to address, the issue of lifestyle audit. And we are not saying, it's not a criminal action to have wealth. We are not criminalizing being wealthy. Actually, we should be looking towards ensuring every Kenyan is very wealthy. What we only need to do is identify what is the source of this money. So that is a point that should the relevant authorities should actually take. Is already a discussion that has been there for many years. So the issue is, and I know even in the conversation I referred to, EACC mentioned that is something they are doing, but maybe more needs to be done towards that.
And of course, aside from even the lifestyle audit, you just said something very critical that, let's say, for example, aside from the 11 the president appointed, more appointments we do know they are coming. So should this next cabinet communicate better and, of course, be aware of the situation where Kenyans are currently, and then tie it to the current issues we are talking about, the changing political landscape? It clearly stated that people are getting aware now of the roles of their members of parliament, MCAs, and that's why they had advocated for the IBC to be reconstituted so that they can recall some of them. So cabinet communicating better, as well as the populace knowing their role as the public under Article 1 of the Constitution, knowing that the power resides with them.
Yeah, that is important, because and the president alluded to this earlier in terms of, and I go back to the same discussion about public engagement. One of the things actually he mentioned was that maybe we never as government went out to the public to explain to them each and every clause of this finance bill. Maybe they never understood us. That is what the president said. Yes, I think there is a lot the government needs to improve in terms of communication. Sometimes government is judged because there is no, and you know, whenever there is no free flow of information, people start imagining a lot of things. Even for you, when your wife cannot know where you are at what time, you are not transparent. She starts imagining so many things, which sometimes may not be true. So there is a lot that needs to happen in terms of, one, transparency, but also secondly, engaging the citizenry, so that the government comes to the level where citizens are understanding exactly what are you saying.
And of course, we're talking about the changing political landscape. We've clearly stated that before it would have not been the case. We've even seen members of parliament apologizing for even the way they voted yes for the Finance Bill 2024. But the next cohort of members of parliament in the 14th parliament, given that this has at least 3 years to finish their tenure in office, but the next cohort of parliament, should it be a lesson to them that they need to listen to the ground more, aside from other forces that are telling them to do otherwise?
And that's why I said, I think, to me, I could be wrong or right, but I think the biggest challenge we have in this country is our political governance. If we have that right, most of the other things will go very well. When you look at the current constitution, there is a lot, unlike the previous one, where we had parliament could easily be held hostage by the executive. The constitution has given a lot of independence to parliament, whether it's parliament at national level or the county assemblies at the county governments. But what we have seen in the media, and starting right from the county assembly, is using that independence and that power to try and manipulate the executive to do things for the selfish interests of these either MCAs or members of parliament, not using it for the purposes which it was intended to. And therefore, if parliament was one independent enough, there is already the legal independence, but I'm talking here about independence of mind, where you can go to parliament and you're able to express yourself on what you think and what you believe without thinking behind what will happen to me. There is a tender that I'm pursuing. Am I likely to miss on this tender if I say this and this? If our members of parliament and also our MCAs were to have that independence of thought and be able to effectively hold the executive accountable, we will not be where we are. The reason why you see the Auditor General, for example, EACC and other constitutional commissions talking of maybe they have tried this and this is not working, and they feel almost frustrated, is because it's Parliament which is supposed to be helping them to actually enforce those recommendations by the Auditor General. Parliament should be calling the relevant bodies to hold them into account. The question is, has Parliament been doing that? So there is a lot of things that we need to do on the political governance, and this starts with what we have mentioned, the issue of ethical transformation and the issue of moral renewal. As members of parliament, they need to be transformed in terms of their ethical culture so that they can put the interest of the nation at heart. When you listen to Senate, immediately this parliament was stormed. Senate had its sessions, and they were just reflecting. They said it was a moment of reflection. And for the first time, I have never heard members of parliament talk like that. And I appreciate the reflections that they gave on the floor of the House. My only hope is that what they said will actually become reality, because it's true. As they did self-evaluation of themselves, Parliament has actually failed this nation. Yes.
And of course, with the light of the reflection you're talking about, the political transformation we need to go through, the million-dollar question will be then, is there goodwill to change the country's political governance?
We don't have any option. It's either we decide we are going the route of a failed state, or we have to take this narrow path of ethical transformation. Because what the younger generation is saying, we are tired of what our parents and our older brothers and sisters subjected us to. We are tired of what we have had to go through, that we are going through an education system where we cannot get jobs after that. We are tired of a situation whereby for me to get a job, I have to know someone. We are tired of a situation for me even to be elected as an MCA, I have to go dish out money. We are tired. So the younger generation is saying They are tired of that situation. So as a nation, and I put myself as part of the leadership, as a leadership, whichever institution you are leading, whether a small one or a big institution, we have to, if you have to progress, you have to start rethinking these issues, because what has been asked for is not something which is out of the blues. It's something that is achievable. It is possible actually to transform this nation. 2 years ago, maybe it was not the right time to do such ethical transformation. But today, that ethical transformation is the only route that we have to take to salvage this nation. If we don't take that route, unfortunately, our nation, where it's going, is not very good, because we could manage in quelling the current and to keep on recalling and recalling and recalling. And when we look at our region, we are not short of examples of nations which have taken that route. We have Sudan here and other nations which have taken that route. Somalia is recovering after many years of this kind of situation. So for me, I would think the top leadership needs to look at this thing, and I would say still because right now the calls that are having is of revolution and all that. Actually, steal the show of revolution and come up with a revolution on ethical revolution. Trying to transform this nation in terms of our ethical culture.
And of course, let me take our viewers to Jogoo House. Earlier on, I told you the National Police Service acting IG, that is Douglas Karanja, was addressing members of the Fourth Estate who were able to record that particular session. Let's listen into the conversation earlier on.
People on matters affecting public demonstrations in Kenya. Fellow Kenyans, since last month, we have witnessed unprecedented loss and a disturbing state of disorder in our country emanating from public demonstrations by the youth, the Gen Z. The magnitude of loss that the country has suffered is evident in the lives that have been lost. The people, both civilians and police officers, that have been injured, property including police vehicles, and the businesses that have been destroyed, and the people that have lost their livelihoods. Despite these losses, the service has upheld with utmost respect the rights of all the people, peaceably and unarmed, to assemble, demonstrate, picket, and present petitions to public authorities as guaranteed by Article 37 of the Constitution. Evidently, and based on credible intelligence, however, there is no doubt that the current demonstrations have become a haven of goons, motivated and opportunistic offenders to loot, destroy property of innocent and hardworking Kenyans. This state of disorder would have been completely avoidable had protesters taken into consideration the simple legal provisions under the Public Order Act that requires organizers of protests or public processions to inform the police or the regulating officers in time as laid with the Constitution. On the same breath, the service reiterates that protected areas are out of bounds. To unauthorized persons as indicated in the Protected Areas Act, Cap 204, Laws of Kenya. For the avoidance of doubt, protected areas listed under the Protected Areas Order, Legal Notice number 9 of 2011, second schedule, includes, among others, the LPG plants, the bitumen plants, and the petroleum depots situated at Embakasi Aviation Depot, that is JKIA. Further, all unauthorized persons are hereby warned not to trespass protected areas. The Kenya Civil Aviation Act number 21 of 2013 under section 58 provides that any person who trespasses on any land forming part of the government aerodrome or an aerodrome licensed under the regulations made under the Act commits an offense that is punishable by the law. Based on the aforementioned, I wish to underscore in my conclusion that security of our country is our collective responsibility as Kenyans. Towards this end, we are working closely with other security agencies to ensure that our country is safe and secure for all of us. We also appeal to all members of the public to remain vigilant in crowded areas and share any information that may assist us in detecting and preventing crime. Notwithstanding, we wish to reiterate that any person who breaks the law will be dealt with swiftly, firmly, and decisively in accordance with the law. As the Acting Inspector General of the National Police Service, I wish to take this opportunity to commend all our officers, wherever they are serving in our country, for their dedication to duty while serving under some of the most difficult circumstances. I further call upon all officers to continue serving our beloved country without fear of intimidation or favor. The National Police Service remains committed to upholding the rule of law. Thank you. Nikiongezea tu kidogo ni kwamba ile mambo ambayo inaendelea kwa hiji yetu saa hizi si mambo sawasawa na hatutaikubalia. Kuenda kuingia kwa kiwanja ya ndege huko na hujapata ruhusa ya kuingia huko haitakubalika. Nataka kukumbusha Wakenya wote, hatuna nchi nyingine inaitwa Kenya, ni hii peke yake tuko naye. Na sisi wote tuko na jukumu ya kuona ya kwamba nchi yetu iko sawasawa na iko na amani ya kutosha. Kwa hivyo mimi nawaomba na wauliza ya kwamba tujukumike sisi wote, tukijua ya kwamba hatuna mahali ingine, ni hii tu, hii ndio nchi yetu, hii Kenya. Hatuna Kenya ingine, iko mahali ingine. Kwa hivyo sisi wote tuichunge na tuiride kama vile wimbo yetu ya taifa yetu inasema. Na tukifanya namna hiyo, kila mmoja yetu atakuwa ako sawa. Asanteni sana. Thank you. We are saying is that
well, that was earlier on where the National Police Service Acting Inspector General of Police, that is Douglas Karanja, was addressing members of the Fourth Estate at the footsteps of Jogoo House, just talking about the latest developments here in the country and reiterating his statement that he issued yesterday, that was 24 hours ago, in terms of accessing protected areas, listing the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, State House, the LPG plants, bitumen plants, petroleum depots, and the Embakasi the aviation depot, including the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and other protected areas in the country. We will be debunking what the statement of the IG has just issued at the footsteps of a Jogoo House. But allow me to continue with our conversation as we're winding up here with Mr. Jeremiah Karanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Mr. Karanja, as we are entering the final leg of our conversation, as an institute, given that you issued a statement yesterday talking about the trust deficit in the country, given that it is low right now, what are these recommendations that you're making to the government so that it can be instituted to address these cropping up issues?
A number of recommendations, and some of them we've already discussed, but maybe allow me to highlight one or two. As a nation, over the past several years, we've put in place task forces, commissions, and all that, dialogues, and we've asked citizens of this nation to give recommendations on how to move this country forward. Most of the time, these come when we are in such a crisis, and the government calls on people to give their recommendations. Unfortunately, those recommendations just lie somewhere as good reports. They are never implemented. Nobody even talks about them once the crisis is over. And that is part of what creates this trust deficit. Because, for instance, His Excellency the President called for dialogue with the young people. And as he mentioned the other day in Bomet, he correctly mentioned that when he called them at State House, they refused and said, let us meet on X. He went to X, they were not there. He has tried to establish a committee, a task force for dialogue. They did not submit their names. Part of the reason is because there is a feeling among the citizens, is this going to yield anything? Is it just like the other one? What is the difference between this and what we had previously? And therefore, to address this, and I'm sure His Excellency the President is well-meaning of this nation, and he has the best interest of this nation. I think the recommendation we are giving him as an institute, one of the things, is even put in place a task force of experts and the professional bodies, including the Institute of Certified Secretaries. We are ready to support the government in that. We have a few people look at all these reports and recommendations that have previously been given, because they are somewhere. There are reports documenting all this. How do we heal this nation going forward? Look at all these recommendations and come up with a report. These are the highlights of the areas that we think, looking at the previous reports, if you address A, B, C, D, we are able to move forward. There is nothing much that we need to do as a nation, even to know what we need. We already know. The challenge is that we know what we need to do, but we are not doing. So what we are recommending and what we are offering as a professional association, we can support the government in trying to bring together all these reports and highlight key areas of improvement. The other recommendation that we give, the Council of the Institute of Certified Secretaries give to government in terms of moving this country forward, and is the whole issue of strengthening institutions. So that institutions, whether you are talking of EACC and the other oversight entities, the Auditor General and all that, their recommendations are not just good recommendations. When the Auditor General does their audit and finds there is A, B, C, D that needs to be dealt with, it should not just end there. There should be a mechanism, or those recommendations should be given some force of law, so that something is seen to be done, which unfortunately is what has not happened in this nation for long. So we have many recommendations to Parliament by the Auditor General, but they just remain as good recommendations. The other area we mentioned is in terms of the political governance. Two things need to happen. Part of what I alluded to earlier in terms of how we elect our representatives. We need to remove the influence of money on the people we elect. We should be looking at people not based on how much they have, but how much they can give to us in terms of their leadership skills. But also number two, we also need to relook the issue of IEBC. Mm-hmm. It is very interesting and very sad that we can have a commission, constitutional commission, running for all these years without being properly constituted. We propose that the law should be amended in such a manner that replacement of any commissioner who is retiring by rotation should actually start 6 months before that commissioner's term comes to an end. So at no given time, should it ever happen that you have such an important body where you don't have commissioners in place. So we need to relook. And also we remove the influence of politics in the IEBC. Mm-hmm. When you look, for instance, the panel that is there provided under the amended act that was assented to by His Excellency the President the other day, mm-hmm. you still find that a lot of political, in terms of the panel that is doing the recruitment process for IEBC commissioners, a lot of it will still be influenced by political parties and all that. Mm-hmm. We need to professionalize that commission and remove the influence of politicians from that. Okay. And there is nothing wrong with politicians. I actually did political science in my undergraduate studies. And I like politics is about sharing of resources. So politicians are very good. They are very important people. But what we need to do is demarcate what is the role of politics and what is the role of professionals, so that institutions can run independently without this political baggage. And finally, is the issue of political loyalists, such that as a governor, as a head of state, whichever position I'm in, when I'm considering people who I need to appoint to this position, the first thing I'm considering are those people who supported me to get into that position. The danger with that is that those people, you are feeling indebted to them. When you put them there, they will not be there to support you going forward. They are first there to recover what they invested in you. They helped you get that position. So they will not be helping you get to the position that you want to be. And therefore, you need to rethink as a nation, whichever position that we are in, that every person have a specific role. There are those who are very good in mobilizing voters and may not be necessarily very good in terms of delivery as a cabinet secretary. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the candid conversation. That is the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Certified Secretaries, Mr. Jeremiah.